So you got what I need?
On the streets of New Orleans,
All right.
drug money bought the city's cops. Officers became the strong arm of drug lords, brutalizing anyone who dared speak out.
Kim! Help!
With police tainted by greed, undercover agents would have to put their lives on the line to bring down the corrupt officers who hid behind a shattered shield.
In a city awash in narcotics, the drug lords have all the power, even over the police. Corruption in New Orleans grew like cancer, eating away at public safety and threatening to destroy the city. Lured by easy wealth, crooked cops began breaking the laws they were sworn to uphold. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. When it became clear that the police could no longer police themselves, the FBI had to get involved. It was a case where the line between friends and enemies became dangerously blurred.
New Orleans, 1993. Tourists packed the city looking for a good time, not all of it legal. Cocaine was in demand, and the dealers cashed in. It was a violent business. For protection, the drug lords turned to those whose duty was to serve and protect. The cops. Officers lined their pockets while enforcing the will of the dealers. They controlled turf like thugs, terrorizing innocent civilians. Agent Stan Haddon of the FBI's Public Corruption Unit in New Orleans was aware of the growing problem.
Our intelligence told us that there was a great variety of corruption taking place among many different officers on the department. However, the one thing that seemed to be the most pervasive was that officers were out there working with drug dealers on the street, were protecting drug dealers on the street, and were stealing money and drugs from drug dealers on the street.
One such drug dealer was Terry Adams, known on the streets as Scaboo. He was a small-time operator who was being extorted by Officer Sammy Williams.
So you got what I need? Come on now, give me what I need.
But this time, the protection money Scaboo paid Williams wasn't enough. On Christmas Eve, the officer demanded that Scaboo pay him $10,000 cash by 6 p.m. If Scaboo failed to show, Williams threatened to beat him and guaranteed him 20 years to life. That evening, at 5 p.m., Special Agent Stan Haddon was finishing up some last-minute work. About to go home, he took one last call. It was Scaboo. His time was running out. He told Haddon that he was being blackmailed, but didn't have the $10,000 the corrupt cop was demanding in less than an hour.
What are the name of the officers?
When Scaboo contacted me, we realized that that was our best chance to do something about police corruption. And I immediately arranged to meet him and debrief him in person. There was no way we could get everything together by 6 o'clock. By the time I met with him, it was 30 minutes before the deadline.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about that.
Haddon and his partner quickly hashed out a plan.
This is, I think, the best one we've got.
Scaboo would meet the officer as arranged, but he'd be wearing an FBI wire. The agents couldn't arrange $10,000 on such short notice. Scaboo would have to convince the cop to accept smaller payments over several meetings.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, they could be rough. Well, you know that. You worked with them.
Yeah, I have.
Assured by Haddon that he would be under constant surveillance, Scaboo took his position. Officer Sammy Williams was still on duty when he arrived with a prisoner cuffed in the back seat of his cruiser. Williams drove Scaboo to a deserted spot behind a seafood market. He ordered him to throw the $10,000 into the trunk. Scaboo told Williams he only had $3,000 now, but would pay the rest later. If the cop arrested Scaboo, he'd never get his payoff. Agents hoped Williams would agree to meet him again for more of the money. He did, and the FBI had it all on tape. Hadn't believed this one incident could lay the groundwork for exposing more corruption in the New Orleans Police Department.
Our main objective was to try and create a strategy that would enable us to prosecute as many bad officers as we possibly could.
In the days that followed, agents, along with prosecutors from the United States Attorney's Office, began to plan their operation, codenamed Shattered Shield. Assistant U.S. Attorney Al Winters would advise agents every step of the way on what would be needed to convict the dirty cops.
We were involved really from day one. We met with the case agents on numerous occasions and discussed exactly what we were interested in being developed as far as evidence in the case.
As with most corruption cases, the FBI's strongest evidence would likely come from wiretaps. According to Special Agent Karen Jenkins, an FBI wiretap specialist, securing them isn't easy.
Title III is a court-authorized intercept or wiretap. It's very difficult to get one approved. It's a lengthy process, very time-consuming. Basically, we have to have approval by FBI officials to get one, and beyond that, we have to have the review and approval by Department of Justice officials. Finally, a federal judge will make the final determination as to whether or not one is authorized.
After delivering 2 more payoffs to Officer Williams, Scaboo had won his trust. Now the FBI seized the opportunity to take the operation to the next phase. Scaboo would approach Williams with a proposition. The volume of drug business was going to increase, and Scaboo would need more cops to protect it. If Williams was interested in higher payoffs, he would need to hire more dirty cops to handle the expansion. Williams took the bait. Scaboo met with him for another recorded payoff in mid-January 1994.
Don't forget now.
But this time, Williams showed up with another officer. He turned out to be Len Davis, Sammy Williams' partner.
Don't forget now, man.
It wasn't surprising. Davis was known in the projects as a gangster with a badge.
It's not very good. See if you can make it.
Reviewing the tapes, hadn't discovered a problem.
What are we listening to?
Both Davis and Williams used the coded language of the drug trade. To make charges stick, the FBI had to record the officers using language that a jury would understand. Hadn't pressed Scaboo to get Williams and Davis to use words like dope, so there'd be no doubt at trial. But when Scaboo told the cops the dope is in, Davis suspected something was up.
If you're in the police business and somebody starts using words that are that overt and that plain, that immediately makes you suspicious that this person is trying to set you up.
Davis shoved Scaboo into the car and told Williams to drive. The agents would be too conspicuous on the deserted streets. If they pursued the cops now, they would put Scaboo's life at greater risk. The only thing they could do was sit patiently and listen to the wire. When the car came to a stop, Davis's rage ignited. He yelled that Scaboo was never to say the word dope again.
They immediately took him to a deserted location, aggressively searched him. You can hear the Velcro ripping loose on his clothes and stuff, and that was a very tense moment.
Davis insisted that he wouldn't go to jail for careless talk. He and Williams stripped Scaboo looking for a wire. Scaboo was sure he was going to die. Miraculously, they never found him.
He's clean. He's clean. He's clean. I'm not going to jail behind you.
Their trust was restored.
You understand me?
Scaboo continued his protection deal with Davis and Williams. For the next job, the cops drove him to a store where a drop-off was to take place. Inside, Scaboo checked a bag at the counter. He passed the ticket to an agent posing as a buyer, who then retrieved the bag. Williams and Davis watched as each transaction went down. They were promised $1,000 for every kilo of cocaine they protected. For them, the deals meant easy money. Davis and Williams met Scaboo behind stores and alleyways for the protection payoffs. The FBI recorded every word. Gradually, Operation Shattered Shield was building a solid case against police corruption. The recordings continued into the spring of 1994. Once agents were sure Davis and Williams were solidly on board, the FBI prepared to expand the investigation. With still more cocaine to guard, Williams and Davis would need to recruit more dirty cops. Federal agents hoped to snare every one of them. But agents knew the officers may become suspicious of Scaboo's rapidly growing drug business. They needed to bring in a big-time dealer, someone whose status as a kingpin would explain the larger shipments.
You like some? Sure. Okay.
Haddon called on Juan
What we're doing
Jackson,
down here is
an FBI agent trained
bringing in
specifically
JJ
for working
here
undercover.
to represent a drug kingpin from up in the East Coast.
At that time, I was in New York City, and I'd been contacted to come down to just be interviewed and go over the actual case. A lot of times, they'll be looking for a certain person, height, weight, color, or whatever, to infiltrate or get into a certain group.
Known as JJ, the agent would act as Scaboo's cocaine supplier, proposing to use New Orleans as a hub to store and distribute his product nationwide.
I was a high-level drug dealer. I played that role, and I had ties where my operation was in both Miami and in New York City.
With the arrival of JJ, Shattered Shield was about to grow from a minor drug business to a booming enterprise. Jackson was one of the FBI's best undercover agents. He was smart and experienced. But his life would be in the hands of the informant, Scaboo, who had no training. Jackson needed to build complete trust with Scaboo, or they'd both be dead.
The informant, because he lives that world, is probably for me anyway, the most important, because he himself has been there. He's been around these people. If he's not believable, it's not going to work. And I think that was the big thing for me down there, was to make sure that we were going to be believable.
Jackson and Scaboo rehearsed their roles again and again, preparing for the real test with Davis and Williams. Jackson, federal agent from the north, and Scaboo, a southerner who had dealt drugs all his life, had to forge a common history. Their story would be that they had met in the Army. After their stint was up, they'd kept in touch. They hashed and rehashed details of their friendship, habits, fake memories that they'd have to know cold, and when to say them. They were dealing with criminals who could run thorough background checks and who were free to use deadly force.
We knew that whatever we had to keep it simple, but we had to make sure that we remembered certain things. The biggest thing I thought that helped us was my initials, my nickname. So no matter how many times they would ask him, what's his name? He believably said, because he only knew, JJ.
In April, the FBI was ready to introduce JJ into the operation. He arrived at a hotel carrying what was supposed to be a drug payment of $100,000. For the first time, Williams and Davis caught a glimpse of the big-time dealer. Their perceptions would be critical.
The first encounter was in the Sheraton Hotel. They were going to stand at a distance and just observe. It was another test to see if they were willing to do what they were going to do. Hey, I don't know how it's going to work. They could arrest me right now and take me off and, I'm down, because it was supposed to be drug money. So it was a test.
Scaboo told the cops about JJ and his plan to use New Orleans as a transport hub for his cocaine business. Davis and Williams carefully studied JJ's every move. Jackson was creating his character before their eyes. It would become his full-time identity, and it would have to hold up under scrutiny. Everything depended on what the cops thought they had seen, and if they believed the cash exchange was genuine. The plan worked. The cops were convinced that JJ was the real deal. The FBI was now poised to take Operation Shattered Shield to the next level. By the spring of 1994, the FBI's Operation Shattered Shield, targeting New Orleans police officers involved in the city's drug trade, was in place. Posing as a drug kingpin named JJ, undercover Special Agent Juan Jackson worked with Scaboo, the drug dealer turned FBI informant. Scaboo rented a hotel room for JJ to meet officers Len Davis and Sammy Williams for the first time.
What's up, man? What's up?
That was showtime. That was a big deal. On any first meeting with any bad guys, a million things are going through your mind. I mean, are you going to be believable? Is anything going to happen that's going to change their attitude? It's either going to work from here or we're all going to go home.
Playing the street-savvy drug dealer, JJ insisted that everyone strip to establish trust. For this first meeting, Jackson didn't wear a wire. He didn't need to. The room had been thoroughly wired by the FBI for audio and video recording. Then, in a bold gamble, JJ invited them to search the room. Because they were cops, Davis and Williams knew how to find a room wire. But JJ bet his life on the FBI's technicians. The cops never found the wires. JJ was beginning to build trust with the officers. But officers are trained to sniff out deception.
I mean, you got to think that I'm meeting with two police officers. Because of the guns, you also always have to remember the threat. You always have to be conscious of the threat and remember exactly where they are and what they're going to do and where the weapons are.
With the cops convinced for the moment, JJ began to discuss the proposal approved by case agent Stan Haddon.
And he played the role of a big-time drug dealer from New York who was using New Orleans as a transshipment point, simply as a storage point, where he could bring dope in, leave it for a while, have it guarded and protected by the officers, and then thereafter have it shipped out to other points unknown.
For their role, JJ promised to pay them $5,000 every day the cops guarded the warehouse. Williams and Davis were enthusiastic about the plan, even offering advice. The cops urged JJ to hire young drivers, give them company uniforms with name tags, and put signs on the sides of the trucks to resemble legitimate companies. For the FBI, the meeting was flawless.
The meeting went off without a hitch. They bought JJ's act. They believed him completely, and they also said the magic word cocaine, which got it clearly established on tape that we were talking about the officers protecting a drug operation.
From that May meeting, the plan moved quickly. The FBI found a warehouse that met their needs, far from public view and rival drug dealers. JJ and Scaboo met Davis and Williams for a walkthrough.
JJ and Scaboo would meet with Len Davis and Sammy Williams at the warehouse for what we call the pre-deal meet. There at that meeting, they would discuss when the dope was coming in, how long it was going to stay in town, and how much money JJ was going to pay for the officers to guard the dope.
Once inside, Davis told JJ that he had half a dozen more officers lined up to guard the cocaine shipments. They would work in 10-hour shifts. Uniformed police outside guarding payloads of cocaine inside. Up to $250,000 worth in each load. At that June meeting came the first big payments from JJ. More than $10,000. Everything is going smoothly. But one aspect of the warehouse plan bothered Assistant U.S. Attorney Al Winters.
Basically, what we told the agents, unless we had evidence, irrefutable evidence, that these people knew they were guarding cocaine, we couldn't prosecute it.
Because the cops stood guard outside the warehouse, they could later claim they didn't know that drugs were inside.
I think having some sort of video or photographic
Haddon had to
reference
find a way to prove Davis's recruits saw the drug
on tape,
shipments.
or maybe even see.
His team mulled over ways to bring the drugs into plain view
We
of
need
the
them
cops.
to implicate themselves. Here, I'll take those.
The officers would have to be recorded seeing and discussing the shipment. Shipments were delivered to the warehouse one weekend every month according to schedule. Then, in mid-July, the FBI sent a shipment that the guards didn't expect. With one load already in the warehouse, an FBI agent dressed as a courier brought another shipment. The driver shocked the guard cops by unloading the cocaine in plain sight. This was too overt for Len Davis's crew. They didn't want to see drugs at all.
They didn't want the vehicles outside the warehouse unloading drugs and stuff where the officers could actually see it.
Quickly, get down here.
The cops called Sammy Williams on a cell phone JJ had given him. Williams called JJ, and JJ and Scaboo raced to the warehouse.
Come here.
JJ responded like a hot-headed drug dealer.
I was arguing with this guy. I mean, we were actually screaming at each other. What are you doing? Where are you? Whatever. And he's observing this. There's a police officer calling Lynn, telling him all what's going on and how this doesn't look good.
To the cops, this whole drug operation was starting to look dangerously unprofessional. Concerned, the driver made another call. Sammy Williams arrived to straighten out the problem.
Okay. See what I gotta deal with? Leave it. I got it. 5 minutes.
JJ explained it was the driver's screw. He asked that the cops escort the van to the city limits right away. Despite the risk, the episode worked. It showed that the cops knew what was inside the warehouse.
This ain't right. What's going
Take
on?
him to the edge of town, all right?
And it was
Get to the
all
edge of town,
videotaped.
Just let him go. Just let him go.
But the episode raised doubts for the cops. Either JJ was an amateur, or he was part of a sting. Either way, they'd be watching him more closely now. Shattered Shield wore on into the summer as all of New Orleans baked.
About 100 degrees out here.
In August, guarding the warehouse proved hard duty. The cops complained of the wear and tear on their engines from running the air conditioning all day in the heat. They wanted a vehicle that was more comfortable, that could also endure the long hours, perhaps a van. The officers asked Len Davis to provide one, and Davis brought their request to JJ. For the investigation, it was a huge break. The sweaty cops had just handed the FBI a golden opportunity.
It was a stroke of luck. One day, Lynn approached me and said that the officers were complaining that they're running their cars in air conditioning, and the cars are starting to overheat. They're burning gas. On and on and on. Once we were able to rent the van and put the listening device inside, we were able to hear a lot more conversations.
The FBI quickly filed the paperwork to get court-authorized wiretaps for the van. Technicians carefully installed state-of-the-art microphones. They had to yield top sound quality for months with no maintenance. The van was a perfect Trojan horse for getting inside information.
I picked this out myself.
The shiny new van made the officers suspicious. They wondered if anyone could have tampered with it.
It ain't nothing wrong with it.
They wanted to know exactly where Davis had gotten the vehicle.
I've never seen this vehicle before.
Because JJ had so completely won Davis's trust, Davis told the cops that he himself had rented the van.
Is it all right for you?
He vouched for it.
It's okay.
That calmed their fears.
I picked it out myself. What do you think, man?
Len Davis didn't want anyone upsetting his flow of payments.
I picked it
The
out
FBI would soon learn just how ruthlessly Davis guarded his interests. After 3 months of Shattered Shield, more and more New Orleans cops came under the FBI's investigation. Len Davis and undercover agent JJ met often to discuss drug shipments and payoffs for police protection. Davis made frequent threats.
They'll tell you, we run this city. We do whatever we want to do. They let me know that very many times. If they feel like they want to shut it down, they'll shut it down.
But Davis liked the money. JJ knew that as long as the money flowed, he would never shut the operation down. Davis called the shots for the other officers. He recruited and set the schedules using his cell phone. But he complained about his bill. So JJ offered Davis a new cell phone, free of charge. It was one more way the FBI could record the cops' knowing involvement in drug trafficking. The wires the FBI had planted in the warehouse van were paying off. One night, 2 guards on the graveyard shift brought prostitutes to the van. The wires picked up everything, even the cops' sexual indiscretions. When Jenkins heard this, she immediately phoned JJ. The situation was a chance to catch the cops off balance. JJ called Davis to complain and to see what they'd get on tape. He told Davis he had checked out the warehouse and found that the cops weren't protecting it. JJ wasn't paying cops to have sex. He ordered Davis to straighten things out. Davis arrived in a fury. His henchmen were threatening to ruin his whole operation.
Lynn was upset. Lynn was a businessman through and through. Lynn wanted it to work exactly one way. And he was really upset that I was upset. And he got up. He came out there and just kicked everybody out.
You got a problem, man.
JJ's call brought Davis down on him hard that night. But the episode triggered deep suspicions among the dirty cops. They now felt sure that JJ was the problem and believed they could run the operation better themselves. They discussed ways to kill JJ. Their plans alarmed Agent Karen Jenkins.
When I heard those conversations where they were threatening to do harm to our undercover agent, it sent a chill down my spine. It scared me. Before I came to New Orleans, I had worked with JJ in another office, so I knew him personally, and I was very concerned.
Despite the threats to his life, JJ was resolute, keeping the cops engaged with plans to further expand the operation. He promised Davis that the largest shipment would arrive before Christmas. After that, he would move the deliveries to another part of the city.
So that's what the phone I'm talking about. You with that?
All the time, JJ had to draw out more evidence on tape without making Davis suspicious.
He was very careful. He watched everything. He paid attention to everything I said. There were conversations where we'd talk, and I'd use the word cocaine. He would count the times I used it. And he would tell me, Jay, you said cocaine 5 times. Jay, you said kilos 5 times. So I had to be careful.
At the same time, Haddon and his team had to defuse another plot they overheard. The cops were threatening to kill the couriers and steal the cocaine. The agents scrambled delivery times and mapped new routes to and from the warehouse to keep the cops off balance. With so many dirty cops, the FBI couldn't make a clean sweep from the outside alone. Agents would need someone powerful in the police force to be a strong ally. Despite the danger of leaks, they decided to seek help from within the New Orleans Police Department. October 1994 brought fresh changes to New Orleans in a new police chief, Richard Pennington.
So, how do you like our first?
Pennington was an outsider from Washington, D.C., hired in the hopes of reforming the Crescent City's crooked police force.
Since you're just moving in, actually, why don't you have a seat?
The FBI invited the new chief for a meeting.
News is not all good, fortunately.
Then Haddon introduced JJ. He informed Pennington that Operation Shattered Shield was uncovering corruption deep in the force that he was about to head.
His name is Scaboo.
His cooperation would be critical for the success of Operation Shattered Shield. On the streets of New Orleans, Davis and Williams were still on active duty, cruising their territory. Len Davis had a long list of public complaints against him. During their rounds one night that October, Davis and Sammy Williams patrolled the Desire housing project. Seeing the pair of cops approach, 2 youths took flight. Williams chased one teenager down, bludgeoned him, and left him bleeding in the street. At that moment, Kim Groves, the victim's aunt, decided that police had terrorized their neighborhood long enough.
Who's gonna pay the bill?
The next day, Groves, a 32-year-old mother of 3, filed a complaint against Len Davis and his partner. She cited the pair for police violence. An officer alerted Davis about the complaint.
Do you want to know his name? Officer Davis, do you know him?
Yeah, this is definitely
Assistant U.S. Attorney Mike McMahon saw the report.
She reported not only Sammy Williams, who did the actual brutality, but Len Davis as well, who had nothing to do with that pistol whipping. And at that point, Len Davis became enraged.
For Davis, Groves' complaint came at the worst possible time. It would bring unwanted attention just as the new police chief was coming on board.
I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get her.
Len Davis vowed to get revenge. The same day that Kim Groves filed her complaint, Richard Pennington was sworn in as New Orleans' new chief of police. That marked the start of Shattered Shield's final phase, the shift from an FBI effort to a partnership with a city desperate to clean house. That very night, Agent Jenkins recorded several conversations that would show just how rotten some of the city's men in blue had become. The first call was cryptic. Hours after Pennington was sworn in, Len Davis made a call on his cell phone. He gave an order to an unknown man.
I need you to do a 30 for me.
The FBI taped the conversation, but because Davis spoke in modified police code, agents didn't know what it meant.
14.5 washing machine, you know.
While they attempted to decipher it, agents recorded a second, more disturbing call. This time, the unknown man called Davis. As they spoke, a police dispatcher announced a murder in the Desire housing project. The victim's name, Kim Groves. When Davis heard the news, he cried, "Rockabye." It was the triumphant cry of a killer. When he later heard it, the call shocked Assistant U.S. Attorney Mike McMahon.
As soon as he confirmed the name of Kim Groves, Davis shut off the radio, and then on the wiretap conversation over the cell phone just exulted in a primal scream of delight that indeed Kim Groves was dead.
When agents reviewed the tapes and checked the phone records, they discovered that the man who spoke to Davis was Paul Hardy. Davis had asked Hardy for a 30, a police code normally used to report a homicide. But that night, Davis used it as an order for the murder of Kim Groves. Canvassing the projects, agents quickly learned that Hardy was a known drug dealer who led a small gang of thugs. With the help of two accomplices, Hardy acted quickly, coldly, and for just $300. As he sped away over a bridge, Hardy threw the barrel of the gun into the canal and handed the body of the gun to an accomplice for safekeeping.
What's up, man?
When the FBI realized Davis's role in the murder, agents grew more concerned for JJ's safety. JJ met with Davis soon afterward. He looked carefully for signs that Davis was anxious or upset.
Yeah, what's up,
He saw
man?
none. The murder of Kim Groves seemed to have relaxed Davis.
Yeah. Look, let me call you back later,
JJ
alright?
still had to play his part, the role of a drug lord. Though uneasy, he was careful not to talk about the murder.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
I wanted to ask a lot of questions about it. I couldn't. The only thing I'd ask him was, is there anything different happening since the last time I was here? He said no. And we went on just like nothing ever happened. Is he a cold-blooded killer? I could probably do you in a minute? Yeah.
Having seen what Davis and his cops could do, JJ had every reason to believe that he could be next. He was unaware that they were already planning ways to kill him. Days after Len Davis ordered the murder of Kim Groves, the FBI learned of more threats by Davis's men. A New Orleans police officer assisting in Operation Shattered Shield received an anonymous threat. It came with Kim Groves' obituary. The message was clear. Death would come to those who talked. That day, Stan Haddon learned of still more threats against JJ and the other agents. Agent Jenkins had recorded 5 cops at the warehouse plotting to kill the couriers and JJ.
Oh, yeah.
Then they would steal the cocaine and sell it themselves. Haddon had no choice. The FBI had to wrap up the operation before it was too late.
Well, once we realized that the lives of our undercover agents were at serious risk, then we had to react to it. We had to do something.
The FBI needed to move up their plans for the big shipment JJ had promised to Davis. A cocaine shipment so large that it would require a half dozen more cops to guard it. But Haddon needed a location unfamiliar to the cops, a place where the FBI could mobilize quickly. He and his team scouted the Mardi Gras truck stop on Elysian Fields Avenue. The spot had good highway access. It also posed little risk to the public in the event of a shootout. The cocaine would arrive on an 18-wheeler, then be loaded into cars and escorted by the cops out of the city. Every detail had to be mapped out. The plan would require the coordination of 85 agents positioned strategically along the routes. When Davis put out the word about a huge November 18th shipment, he enticed new recruits. As a load of cocaine worth $250,000 arrived, Davis, Williams, and their crew stood ready as protection. Agents posing as drivers moved the shipment. From the command center, Haddon and Jenkins kept watch of the whole operation. There were hundreds of ways the truck stop scenario could go wrong. With the undercover agents' lives on the line, there was no margin for error. The cocaine was divided in 2 loads. Williams escorted one. Davis followed the other. They shepherded the couriers to the edge of town, shielding them from other drug gangs and from the law.
To make it easier for our surveillance, we had one of the courier cars go to the east and one go to the west because we had 2 complete surveillance teams operating simultaneously, and we didn't want the 2 to get crossed up with each other.
The operation went off without a hitch. 6 additional cops were videotaped in the act of drug trafficking. The FBI was about to enter the last phase of Shattered Shield, arresting the corrupt cops who would kill anyone who opposed them. After the big truck stop operation, FBI agents moved quickly on the murder of Kim Groves. They searched the house of the hitman Paul Hardy. There, agents found an unauthorized copy of a guide to police codes, the same codes that Davis used when he ordered Groves murdered. Another search at the home of one of Hardy's accomplices turned up the murder weapon, a 9mm handgun. The 2 investigations, Shattered Shield and the murder, were closing at the same time. For the ringleaders, the FBI took no chances. Agents came to Len Davis's house the next day when he was off duty.
Look, I ain't done that.
What are you talking about? On top of your head.
Look, I'm a police officer, man.
Put your hands on top of your head.
The thug with a badge was arrested on federal drug charges and for the murder of Kim Groves. For Davis's partner, Sammy Williams, agents would use a different approach. Haddon wanted to flip Williams to the prosecution side.
At that point,
it worked.
And they decided, okay, let's throw another curveball and then let's bring Juan in. So they brought me into the door and I introduced myself, especially to Juan Jackson, the FBI. You could see the color leave his face. His world just came crashing down.
Sammy Williams turned government witness. His testimony would later prove crucial for getting convictions. Haddon and his team had no time to lose. Before news of Davis and Williams' arrests could spread, they had to deliver the rest of the gang to justice. Dozens of armed men in uniform.
The strategy we were to employ was to arrest Len Davis on December the 5th. And then on December the 6th, we had all of these officers appear before a federal grand jury. And then on December 7th, the grand jury ordered all these officers to come to the FBI office to give handwriting exemplars.
Len Davis's recruits arrived at the FBI's office to give handwriting samples for analysis together with 60 fellow officers. Since the drug ring involved no written records, and so many officers provided writing samples, the crooked cops suspected nothing. Like the others before it, the FBI's ruse worked. One by one, more than a dozen dirty cops of New Orleans were arrested.
That was a safe way to do it because obviously all of these officers were armed and they were facing very serious charges, and that was a way to do it to avoid any potential for any bloodshed or any unwanted resistance by the officers.
In court, the FBI's recordings built a solid case against the officers.
Are you aware we have hours and
The videos and audio tapes spoke louder than the code words and erased all doubts that jurors might have had. Agent Karen Jenkins knew the evidence was strong.
The jury was able to hear for themselves what the officer said. They were able to see for themselves what they were doing because of the videos that we had.
That wasn't me. It could have been anybody.
As prosecutor Al Winters had predicted early in the investigation, Davis tried to talk his way out of it.
All police officers know what that is. It's a homicide.
Even after all the safeguards we took, Davis's defense at the trial was that he was conducting his own undercover operation, that it was not really done according to the book, but, you know, he was a poor cop and didn't have a lot of training, but he was trying to conduct his own undercover operation.
Davis never admitted any wrongdoing. He didn't need to. The audio and videotape spoke for themselves. Faced with the prospect of convicting those sworn to protect them, the citizens of the jury listened intently.
The tapes were chilling, and as those tapes were played, the courtroom was as silent as a cathedral.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, Your Honor, we have.
Will the defendant please stand?
The jury deliberated just 15 minutes.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree and hereby sentence the defendant.
Len Davis was sentenced to death for his role in Kim Grove's murder, which was later commuted to life. In 2 other trials, Davis and his co-conspirators received 18 convictions for drug trafficking. 15 officers were headed for prison. Because he cooperated with prosecutors, Sammy Williams was sentenced to just 5 years. He would never again wear a badge.
Add that you have irrevocably stained that uniform you once wore. But I must reluctantly recognize that other crimes can only be solved with cooperation of people like you. Court dismissed.
For the Big Easy, Haddon's case brought a long, hard look in the mirror.
You know, I think that the city of New Orleans has been very tolerant of all sorts of conduct which might be considered improper in other parts of the country. It's part of the culture here, and I'm a Louisiana native. But I think this was a wake-up call to the citizens of New Orleans that there was a serious problem within the NOPD, and that problem had to be addressed.
You know, you take an oath, and I think that when you do that, there's no excuse for anything else. I think we helped. I think that now their focus is different. I think hiring, I think pay scale, I think everything about what the New Orleans Police Department is about is different.
Under Chief Pennington, the New Orleans Police Department revamped its practices and fired more rogue cops. The Big Easy had cleaned house. The department and the FBI continue to work together to bring justice to the city's streets. In Las Vegas, an ex-convict is back to his old ways. Big money cons, low-level burglary, and violent assaults. Local police track him, but he's gone. The FBI joins the case, and the violence escalates. To capture the desperate fugitive, authorities need to anticipate his next move.
Women are most often assaulted by someone they know, but sometimes a stranger attacks. Near Las Vegas in December of 2000, a young woman became the latest victim of a violent sex offender. Before authorities could locate him, he would add murder to his list of crimes. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. FBI agents tracked the armed fugitive across the country, and as they closed in, the gunman was determined to avoid capture at any cost.
Las Vegas, Nevada. Beneath the bright lights are thousands of workers keeping the town running, and criminals ready to take whatever they can. Early on the morning of December 11th, 2000, in the Las Vegas suburb of Henderson, a 17-year-old waitress was on her way to work. In a parking lot, a man offered her a ride to work.
I'm just going to work.
She declined.
Let's go. Get in. Get in. Open. Hurry up, move it. Get in.
His gun stopped her from crying out. He drove her to a secluded area where he sexually assaulted her. As soon as she could, she took her only chance and fled, running to a nearby restaurant to call 911. Henderson police took the call.
Are you injured? Do you need an ambulance, ma'am?
The girl gave a description of her attacker and his vehicle.
You say that was a red Eclipse? Did he have any weapons?
The patrol officer headed to the restaurant to interview the young woman and take her to a nearby medical center. En route, he spotted a red sports car that matched the description given by the victim. When the officer approached, the driver sped away.
Matching that suspect vehicle description. It's a red Mitsubishi Eclipse, number 1 travel lane of westbound Warm Springs at Valley Parade.
As they neared the city and busier streets, the suspect's driving became more erratic. The officer decided the risk to civilians was too great and pulled back. But police now had the vehicle's license plate number.
A vehicle matching that suspect vehicle description.
Henderson PD ran the tags and traced the vehicle to a Las Vegas address.
Warm Springs at Valley Parade.
Las Vegas detective Barry Jensen contacted the owner, who explained he had given the car to his daughter to use. The owner said he and his daughter, Rachel Mills, would meet Detective Jensen at her apartment. She had just gotten off work from a local casino. When the detective arrived, he told them about the car eluding police and the reported sexual assault. Rachel said that her husband had the car that morning. He had dropped her off at work at 5 a.m., and she had not seen him since. She hoped there had been some mistake.
She knew that he had been arrested for sexual assault in the past. She knew that he had been in prison, but she didn't believe any of that was true, or she didn't want to believe that any of that was true.
Rachel had noticed their car had been parked across the lot. Detective Jensen asked her to check the apartment and see if her husband had returned. He and her father would check out the car. Looking around the apartment, she realized that her husband had taken most of his belongings. It appeared as if he had left her. The father owned the car, but since Rachel and her husband were the regular drivers, only they could consent to a search.
His stuff is gone. His clothes, the drawers, all the stuff he keeps on the dresser, photos, I don't know. Everything seems it's gone.
Would you give me your verbal consent to search the car without getting a search warrant?
Oh, okay, okay.
You got a set of keys?
Though shaken by what was happening, Rachel gave Jensen permission to search the vehicle. The detective believed the placement of the car far from the apartment was telling.
In my opinion, it was hidden in the parking lot. I think he knew the police were going to find his apartment. If his car wasn't parked right out front, I think he felt that he had more time. He was creating more distance between law enforcement and himself.
Inside the car, Jensen noticed that the few personal effects matched what the assault victim described, pointing more suspicion toward Rachel's husband. She said he didn't have a regular job, but beyond that, Rachel and her father were unable to give the detective much more information.
All they were able to tell us was that he loved to play blackjack and craps. They had no idea where he was getting the money to do that.
Jensen called for crime scene technicians to process the car, in case there was unseen evidence inside.
It's going to be about 15 minutes for the tow truck to get here.
He had to tell Rachel that her husband was a strong suspect in the assault of a 17-year-old girl. At his request, she gave Jensen a photo of her husband, Mansour. If Mansour was the assailant, Jensen hoped the victim could ID him based on the photo.
I want you to look at every picture.
At the police station, Detective Jensen interviewed the young woman. She identified Mansour as her attacker. Nevada police charged him with kidnapping and sexual assault. Jensen found that Mansour had an extensive rap sheet.
He'd been arrested several times for sexual-related offenses, sexual assault, open and gross lewdness. He'd also been arrested for burglaries, credit card fraud, and weapons violations.
While in prison, Mansour had been diagnosed with a severe personality disorder that bordered on sociopathic.
He was a sophisticated con artist. He could make people do things that they wouldn't normally do. He was a serial rapist and a career criminal.
For several days, police had no good leads on the case. Then Jensen got a tip from a new ally.
Sexual assault, Jensen.
Mansour's father-in-law.
Yeah, Richard. He'd been digging around, talking to family friends, and he knew that Mansour was a big gambler at one of the local hotels, and he felt that he would have a room there. I found that he did have a room that was comped because he was a large money player.
Since hotel security had cameras in the hallways, The detective asked them to watch and call police if anyone entered Mansour's room.
They weren't set up to make an arrest or to grab Mansour. I didn't feel comfortable asking them to because I believed that he was dangerous.
That night, a security officer spotted a man entering Mansour's room. He immediately contacted Las Vegas police.
He has hotel security. He has returned to the hotel.
Detectives were on their way. But the man exited the room less than a minute after he went in and casually slipped away. When the Vice Squad detectives arrived, they checked his room.
We found a suitcase and some family pictures, nothing else that would help or further our investigation.
They searched the entire hotel casino, but there was no sign of Mansour. They realized in order to find him, they needed more resources and turned the case over to Special Agent Scott Backen and Detective Brian Dunaway of the Las Vegas FBI's Criminal Apprehension Team, a multi-agency squad responsible for tracking down fugitives in the Las Vegas area. The squad's first step was to distribute informational sheets about Mansour to area hotels.
When we have someone that we're looking for and we believe that he's gone to a hotel or something, we have a system called TRAX, T-R-A-X, which is it's a fancy fax machine. It allows us to send color digital photos to large groups of people simultaneously to alert them. Those people that don't have TRAX alerts, we went to old-fashioned police work. We were knocking on doors and delivering these things and conducting interviews and making sure that everyone knew about him.
We're looking for this guy right here. He comes under a few different aliases.
Investigators checked registers for known aliases of Mansour. They found nothing.
These two gentlemen are from the FBI.
But some security personnel recognized Mansour as a suspect in a string of room burglaries plaguing the Vegas Strip. They described his frequent cons. They said Mansour preyed on tourists, mostly those of Middle Eastern or Asian origin.
Okay, thank you.
He would often pose as a translator or as a tour guide, and he would do this in order to gain the confidence of people that were in town who had money. After gaining their confidence, he would use this information to usually enter their rooms because he was able to contact the hotel staff and pose as these people.
When the tourists returned to their rooms, they found them ransacked.
Right away.
Over several days, Mansour had stolen more than $250,000 in cash and jewelry.
We have been completely robbed. We have been robbed.
Everything is gone.
Agent Backen believed the suspect would use the money to flee Nevada.
We obtained an unlawful flight to avoid prosecution warrant, which is a federal warrant, charging him with fleeing one state, going to another to avoid prosecution for the underlying charge, which was sexual assault. With the federal warrant, it allowed us to engage other FBI offices around the country in searching for Mansour.
They tried to narrow the scope of the nationwide search by reviewing any piece of information they could find regarding the suspect.
We were able to gather INS records, immigration records, that type of stuff, and we found that he had been in their custody for a great deal of time, and he was here citing some sort of religious persecution. And then we were able to pull in the records from New Jersey and the other places that he had been at. We found that he had been involved in gambling, fraud, generally property crimes types of things.
Mansour's wife gave them long-distance phone records which showed many calls to casinos around the country.
We began developing a profile of him as a gambler, and once we did that, we focused our investigation on the gambling establishments.
One of the gambling communities they notified was New Orleans. Casinos there should look out for it. On the morning of January 9th, 2001, 29 days after the Las Vegas sexual assault and kidnapping, a man in an obvious wig appeared at the New Orleans airport. Paying cash, he booked a flight to Las Vegas under the name Francis Gabriel. In the middle of the transaction, he changed his destination to Los Angeles.
There you go. Thank you.
Ticket agents are trained to spot suspicious activity.
Security, please. Yes.
She notified airport police. The wig, cash, and odd behavior was enough probable cause for the undercover officer to question the man. He followed him outside, then asked to see his identification ticket.
Like I'm asking you, you got your ticket?
Soon, New Orleans authorities would learn the identity of the carjacker and join the hunt for an elusive fugitive.
Yeah, I'm at door 6A. He ran up on the roof.
In January 2001, Las Vegas authorities hunted fugitive Mansour, suspected of robbery, kidnapping, and sexual assault. A month later at the New Orleans airport, a man in a disguise assaulted a police officer, then escaped in a carjacked pickup truck. Undercover Jefferson Parish police assigned to the airport reported the incident. And an APB for the truck and its driver went out to police in nearby parishes. "30 minutes later, a St. Charles Parish deputy spotted the pickup truck 10 miles from the airport. He called in the plates, confirming it was the stolen truck. But the deputy knew there was construction ahead, so he did not pursue at high speed. The truck entered the road construction zone, but the driver was not going to stop and swerved toward a highway worker. The St. Charles Parish deputy arrived seconds later. Seeing the worker down, he called for an ambulance, then went to check the truck. The carjacker was gone. At the airport, police searched a piece of luggage the fugitive had dropped. Since it was left unattended on airport property, Lieutenant Glenn Toka did not need a warrant.
We found some identification with a photograph of the suspect, an Italian passport. When we checked that, it was found to have been a stolen passport, which the suspect had obviously placed his photograph on.
Police also found a list of stolen credit card numbers, players' cards from casinos throughout the United States. and multiple Social Security numbers. Because of possible interstate fraud, Jefferson Parish Police called the New Orleans FBI. They forwarded the photo and name used on the stolen passport to Special Agent Sandra Zulli.
We immediately started running that name through our system to try to identify photographs of anyone that used that name.
The photo of fugitive Mansour, wanted out of Las Vegas, matched the one on the passport. Calling Vegas to learn more details, Zulli confirmed it was him. Despite the best efforts of the emergency personnel, the highway worker died of his injuries. Authorities began their search for Mansour at the truck and worked outward from there. Lieutenant Toka joined the search near the Mississippi River.
We did about a mile radius search, plus the state police helped us on the perimeters that were doing the search. We had a helicopter up, plus we had tracking dogs in the location.
The area's landscape made it difficult.
There are buildings, tugboats, wharves. It's a working area, and there's a lot of abandoned warehouses there, derelict barges up on the ground and everything.
They searched for more than 24 hours, checking every conceivable hiding place.
We theorized that he had either gone into the river and drowned, or that he had made his way out of the security envelope.
Still, authorities had to assume that Mansour was alive. They hoped to determine where the fugitive had been while in New Orleans. Perhaps he would go back there. They reviewed airline passenger lists and surveillance tapes to reconstruct the fugitive's movements.
The day before, he had come down from Connecticut into New Orleans, and we were able to track him to some local casinos that he was at that night, and then the next day he was supposed to be flying out, and that's when he was confronted by the officer.
Mansour's behavior pattern was clear.
We felt that eventually he would show up at a casino, and that's why we focused on the casino security departments to make sure they were alerted to look for him in possibly a disguise.
Authorities also broadcast his photo and the aliases he used, hoping the public could help find him. Anyone with information was asked to call a dedicated tip line. Police immediately began receiving sightings. One came from a motorist who thought he had seen Mansour the night the highway worker was killed. The motorist said that night he'd been driving behind a taxi on a road near the airport. He saw a man come out of the woods and hail the taxi. It looked like Mansour. But police could not find the taxi driver, and the trail went cold.
We were receiving numerous reports of individuals who they felt looked like this individual walking down the road, sitting at a bar, at a casino, and all of these were checked out.
Yet none of the sightings led to Mansour. The next lead came from officers patrolling the nearby Mississippi River.
Shortly after the disappearance, we received a call of a body that they located floating at the bank of the river. And we knew that in the file from the Las Vegas division that we had dental records of Mansour, who had dental work done while in prison. So we obtained the dental records and had a comparison done.
The records did not match. Mansour's whereabouts were still unknown. And now that he was wanted for killing a man, he'd be more desperate than ever to avoid them. Wanted on a charge of sexual assault and kidnapping, fugitive Mansour disappeared from Las Vegas. Weeks later, he resurfaced in New Orleans, where he carjacked a truck and killed a highway worker. Not only was he moving quickly across jurisdictions, he was also using multiple identities, according to FBI Special Agent Sandra Zulli.
Mansour utilized so many different aliases. We determined that he was stealing identification cards on a regular basis while he was staying in the casino area. The players' cards that we located in the luggage were determined to be stolen from casinos.
Some of those players' cards were from casinos in Atlantic City. To follow up on them, Louisiana agents contacted the FBI's Newark field office. Special Agent Joseph Fury checked on a casino player's card Mansour used under the name Yasser Hamid.
I called the hotel casino and talked to the senior vice president in charge of security, and he advised me that Mr. Hamid had in fact been a player at their casino, and on January 3rd of 2001 had played and won approximately $50,000.
That was 6 days before the airport incident in New Orleans. But considering Mansour's lavish gambling lifestyle, the money probably would not last long.
If he was desperate for money, we thought he might come back to Atlantic City to gamble again.
Agent Fury learned a New Jersey phone number had been found in Mansour's luggage.
We didn't know the reason he had the number, whether or not he had ever called the number, or who was on the receiving end of that call.
Okay. Authorities traced the number to a house in the Atlantic City suburb of Brigantine and set up surveillance on it. They knew the house belonged to a local cab driver, but little else. Agents watched on the slim chance the house might be connected to Mansour. Other teams of agents also searched the gambling community of Atlantic City.
We distributed wanted posters to all of the hotel casinos in Atlantic City, as well as the Atlantic City Police Department and New Jersey State Police.
Someone, somewhere, was bound to run into the elusive killer. Yet months went by with no sign of him. Then, at an Atlantic City hotel on the night of May 4th, 2001, a vacationing Pennsylvania state trooper and his wife returned to their room.
Honey? Yeah.
And discovered they weren't alone.
Get over there. Put your hand. Everything's fine. Shut your mouth. Here's my wallet. I'm not worried about that.
The trooper recognized Mansour from wanted posters. He knew the man had killed before. But for some reason, Mansour left without harming the couple or taking any money. The state trooper notified the hotel about Mansour and asked them to call the FBI.
Yes, right now. Call the FBI.
Mansour had emerged from hiding, now with a gun. Again, a threat to anyone who ran across him.
Yes, thank you. Bye. Are you okay?
As the case progressed, I knew he was a desperate man, living a life of luxury which he didn't earn, and he was desperate to avoid law enforcement contact.
2 days later, at 6:30 in the morning, a casino ATM alerted hotel security of someone attempting to use a stolen credit card to obtain a cash advance.
Come here a second. I need to show you something real quick. Check this guy out here on the ATM machine here. Why don't you go check that out for me? Check see what's going on.
One of the hotel security officers confronted the cardholder, who calmly explained the card belonged to him. He claimed he had reported it stolen, but found it again that morning and forgot to cancel the hold on it. Asked for identification, the man handed the security officer an Indian passport that had been obviously altered. When the security officer tried to bring the man in for questioning, he pulled a gun,
Don't move, you got it. Don't follow me.
then fled. Though the officer didn't know it yet, the man he was trying to take into custody was Mansour. The suspect jumped into a nearby taxi and forced the driver to help him escape. Hotel security called the incident in to Atlantic City Police. Several units mobilized to find the carjacked taxi. But once again, Mansour was one step ahead. When he got distracted, the driver took a chance. Minutes later, witnesses outside the Taj Mahal casino saw a well-dressed man leave a taxi idling at the curb and disappear inside. Fielding the calls about the incidents, Atlantic City Police believed Mansour must be involved. Authorities immediately responded to the Taj Mahal. Witnesses' descriptions matched the fugitive. And detectives found an altered Indian passport, the one from the ATM incident. The photo was of Mansour.
The cab driver stated that Mansour told him he would shoot and kill him, as well as any police officer who stopped him, and he would not go back to jail. At that point, we kind of stepped up the investigation, knowing that it wasn't a one-time incident. It was an individual who was on a crime spree and seemed to be on a downward spiral.
Mansour had eluded authorities for months. Now, as agents surrounded the massive Taj Mahal casino, they hoped they finally had him cornered. The FBI sought Mansour for kidnapping, sexual assault, carjacking, and second-degree murder. He had eluded them in Las Vegas and New Orleans. In May of 2001, he surfaced in Atlantic City. Hoping finally to stop him, FBI Special Agent Joseph Fury organized a search of the hotel casino Mansour was seen entering.
We established a command post at the Taj Mahal with the Atlantic City Police Department, the New Jersey State Police, as well as security personnel from the Taj Mahal in an effort to locate Mansour, thinking that he may be in the hotel somewhere.
But Mansour wouldn't be easy to find. The 1,200-room hotel boasts a 135,000 square foot casino and is often filled with thousands of guests. And in service areas, there are dozens of hallways with plenty of offices and storage rooms to hide in. Investigators had to clear each one.
Clear, coming out.
Authorities feared Mansour had escaped again. They broadened the search area.
New Jersey State Police and Atlantic City Police canvassed the entire hotel casino, as well as every hotel casino in Atlantic City.
They found nothing. Somehow, Mansour had slipped away. Investigators requested security tapes from all Atlantic City hotel casinos, hoping to find a lead. After reviewing hundreds of hours of tapes, they finally spotted Mansour.
00.
He was getting out of a cab,
Straightforward. Wave to the
checking the
cab driver.
taxi's identification number. State police learned it was owned by an independent operator living outside of Atlantic City, in Brigantine.
I asked what the cab driver's name was and the location where they were going, and they told me a name which came back to the individual who I had been surveilling in anticipation of Mansour returning to the Atlantic City area.
Authorities returned to the Brigantine house with a search warrant and a SWAT team. The SWAT team moved into position. To get the cab driver out of the house, an agent called inside, posing as a dispatcher. He told the driver that one of his regular fares needed a ride.
We felt that if Mansour was inside, it might be a hostage-type situation.
Put your hands on top of your head. Put your hands on top of your head.
But the driver emerged alone, and they pulled him away so they could talk to him safely. The driver said no one else was in the house, but the arrest team had to be sure.
All clear.
It was another disappointment. Authorities returned to the state police barracks to interview the cab driver. He said he had driven Mansour around the Atlantic City area several times in recent years. They had become friends, but now he was more than willing to cooperate.
He immediately told us that Mansour had been at his house that morning, had pulled a gun on him, and had ordered him to drive him towards Philadelphia, which was approximately an hour drive from Atlantic City. He actually drove Mansour into Philadelphia and dropped him off.
The driver hadn't called police because Mansour knew where he lived, and he was afraid he would come back to get him. Fury notified the FBI's Philadelphia field office that Mansour might be there.
I then drove from Atlantic City to Philadelphia with pictures of Mansour and assisted the Philadelphia division.
Sir, FBI, had a couple.
The agents went to a bus station near where Mansour was dropped off, looking for anyone who had seen him.
We showed the picture to several counter attendants, one who recognized the picture and said that Mansour had purchased a bus ticket to New York.
Yes, sir.
It seemed Mansour had gone to Philadelphia, only to make his trail more difficult to follow. On May 9th, 2001, the FBI added Magfour Mansour to its 10 most wanted fugitives list. This made him a top priority for every FBI agent in the nation, according to Task Force member Brian Dunaway.
Him being on the FBI's Most Wanted does a few things. It allocates a great deal more resources to the investigation, and it places a $50,000 reward for his capture.
The following day, security at Atlantic City's Taj Mahal Resort reported that a gunman matching Mansour's description had robbed the hotel jewelry store of $300,000 worth of watches. Surveillance video captured the plate number of the limo Mansour used to escape. At the Newark field office, the FBI questioned the limousine driver. He said he had picked Mansour up in New York City earlier that day. When Mansour had called for the limo, he asked to be picked up on a certain street corner. The driver didn't know where he was staying. He said Mansour seemed like any other high-stakes gambler. But around 8 o'clock, he heard security alarms. Then Mansour jumped in and ordered him to speed away. The driver followed orders. Mansour had a gun. The fugitive got out of the limousine 5 blocks from the robbed hotel and hopped into another cab, a white Crown Victoria with New Jersey plates. The FBI asked local police to issue an all-points bulletin for white Crown Victoria cabs in Atlantic City. That night, police stopped every taxi matching the description. Eventually, they found the driver who had picked up Mansour. He reported that he had taken the man to Philadelphia and dropped him off at the airport. The FBI learned that only 2 flights had departed Philadelphia late enough for Mansour to have boarded. Both were bound for Las Vegas. Manifests did not show Mansour's name, but he might be flying under an alias they did not know yet. If Mansour were on either flight, authorities in Las Vegas would be ready for him. In the pre-dawn hours of May 11, 2001, the FBI believed deadly fugitive Mansour Mansour might be aboard one of 2 flights to Las Vegas. New Jersey FBI Special Agent Joseph Fury kept working as the planes traveled cross-country.
I contacted the Las Vegas division to advise them that Mansour had committed the armed robbery in Atlantic City, and he may in fact be en route back to Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Police Department as well as the FBI were at the airport waiting for both planes to arrive.
Vegas detective Brian Dunaway had been tracking Mansour from the beginning. He knew how dangerous and desperate the fugitive was.
Everyone that we had talked to, everyone that knew anything about him, knew that he wasn't going to go back to jail. He had made those statements, and his actions were just of such desperation that he wasn't a person that wasn't going to face these charges. And his previous incarcerations and the records that they kept on him there was just no way he was going back. So he was going to go out in a blaze of glory.
Mansour frequently used disguises and false IDs to travel. But he wasn't on the first flight. When the second plane landed, agents cleared it too. From the limo driver they'd interviewed, they knew he had last stayed in New York City.
At that point, I contacted Special Agent Ted Miller of the New York Division to advise him that Mansour was not on either flight that went to Las Vegas, and it would be more likely that he would be in New York City.
Reviewing Mansour's phone records from Las Vegas, agents interviewed Mansour's associates in New York, reminding them of the $50,000 reward. Eventually, they tracked down Mansour's regular limo driver in the city.
In New York, it's very hard to get a taxi cab, and you have several private limos that will be at your beck and call. And this limo driver was willing to drive Mansour because he seemed to have quite a bit of money.
He said he hadn't seen Mansour recently, but on previous trips, he always picked Mansour up from the same Midtown hotel.
Okay. If you think of anything else that might help us, please give us a call.
The limo driver was cooperative and was going to take them to an area where he thought Mansour was staying. It was approximately 6 in the morning when Agent Miller advised me they had located the hotel.
FBI agents, New York City police, and U.S. Marshals headed to the hotel. Special Agent Timothy Letourneau was part of the arrest team.
We got a call from Special Agent Miller saying the subject Mansour committed an armed robbery last night at the Taj Mahal Casino in Atlantic City, and we believe he retreated to New York, and we think we have good leads that he may be at the hotel located at West 47th Street.
The investigators set up on surveillance outside. Before the stakeout, they had been briefed on the case and warned of the danger.
We talked about how he brandished a handgun during several crimes he committed. We talked about the armed rape of a 17-year-old girl and a murder he committed in Louisiana. So we knew about his propensity to violence.
Several investigators went to check with the front desk. The clerk was able to confirm that Mansour had used one of his aliases to check in. He gave them Mansour's room number, but didn't know if he was there.
Our plan at that time was we were going to make a ruse phone call into the room. We believed Mansour might be staying in. We had agents outside the room. We had agents in the lobby. What we decided to do was a wake-up call. If he answered or we heard stirring in the room, we would know he'd be in there, or someone would be in there. We made several calls. We got no response telephonically. We heard nothing in the room.
Mansour must have gone out. They hoped he would return. Hours later, they spotted him. He was alone and heading back into the hotel.
Come on, guys.
This time, they wouldn't let him slip away. Mansour had long vowed not to be taken alive. He went for a gun and aimed at a detective.
From the time I saw the gun to the time my weapon was fired, you're talking about 2 or 3 seconds. So not a whole lot of time to think about it. You have innocent civilians in the lobby. Missing isn't an option.
Even with 3 9mm rounds in him, Mansour continued to struggle as they took him into custody. Because of their training, the arrest team was unharmed.
Things had to be instinctive. Things had to be committed to muscle memory. And those reactions that occurred that morning were reactions based on excellent training. They were the byproduct of great training. So my recommendation to other agents would be receive as much training as you can. Try and get it to the point where it's instinctive.
The pursuit of Mansour had lasted 5 months, involving more than a dozen law enforcement agencies. New York City emergency personnel tried to stabilize Mansour, but he died en route to the hospital. His rampage was finally over.
Not any one law enforcement agency can handle an investigation of this magnitude by themselves, and without the cooperation and efforts of all of the law enforcement agencies, I don't think Mansour would have been caught without causing harm to someone else.